All right, guys, welcome to the I Love CVille show. My name is Jerry Miller. Thank you kindly for joining us. We are live in Charlottesville, across the Commonwealth, the country, and the world on the I Love CVille network. It's great to be with you on a Friday. Dave Norris is in the house. I love this guy. I think anybody that watches this program knows I'm a huge fan of Dave Norris. And I'll tell you what, a man this connected, his time is valuable. So my friend, first, good afternoon. How are you?
I'm great, Jerry. Good to be back with you. It's been a little while. So good to see you again.
It's great to have you back.
Always a pleasure.
Very much enjoy you.
Likewise.
My friend, since the last time we talked, we have had, as the world turns, of Charlottesville government.
Yeah.
We've had the unexpected firing of Chief Brackney.
Right.
We have had the withdrawal of Mayor Nikiah Walker from the Charlottesville City Council election. We've had Juan Diego Wade establish himself even more as a clear-cut favorite to win a spot on council. I'm intrigued to see if Yaz Washington is able to rally Nikiah Walker's base to potentially challenge Brian Pinkston for the other spot. I still think Pinkston is a favorite over Washington to win. We got some announcements on your end, some news to get out as well. How about I do this? Where should we start, Dave?
There's a lot on the table, Jerry.
Where should we start? Where do you want to begin?
Well, let's start with Nikiah Walker, just because, I was one of the people 4 years ago or more or longer that was encouraging her to run for office, and I consider her a friend, and I was saddened to see that she had withdrawn from the race, but I wasn't completely surprised. I mean, I think she's just really been through the ringer, and it's been a tough ride, but I think she's brought a really invaluable perspective to City Council. That's needed, and we don't have that many sort of working class people that end up stepping up and running for office or getting elected to office, and to have somebody from the working class African American community in Charlottesville put herself out there and really push the perspective of somebody who's was born and raised here, who knows the struggles, knows the opportunities. And I realize she's not everybody's cup of tea, but honestly, she didn't run to be everybody's cup of tea.
That's true.
And so I want to just publicly thank her and acknowledge her contributions and wish her well. I think she deserves a little bit of time off. So.
Sue Smith, hello, welcome to the show. Ray Cadell just shared the program. Folks at the CVille Weekly and NBC 29 watched the program. Charlottesville, former mayor Dave Norris in the house. Did it surprise you that she withdrew?
Well, like I said, I wasn't totally surprised. She had kind of gone back and forth, about whether or not she was going to do this, and but I didn't know beforehand that she was going to withdraw. She kind of kept her cards close to her chest, and I don't begrudge her a moment for deciding to, take a step back. And I'm sure she'll stay involved in other ways. I have no doubt. But I hope she gets some rest and recharges her batteries a little bit. But she's still got a little bit of time left, and I expect she'll work hard all the way to the end.
Vanessa Parkhill, hello. Scott Aaronworth, the Esquire, is watching in Virginia Beach. Hello, and welcome to the show. Is it too early to tell Nikiah Walker's legacy and what it will be?
Well, I think it's a little early, although, if you look at some of the changes she's made since she's been in office, particularly around issues of reentry for felons coming out of the correctional system. Her Home to Hope program has been a success. She successfully fought to increase wages for city workers. She's been a real champion for housing and affordable housing, public housing redevelopment in particular, helping to steer millions of dollars towards some long overdue and badly needed improvements to our public housing communities. She's just been, I think, stalwart, and she's brought a lot of attention to issues that oftentimes make people uncomfortable, and sometimes the way she brings attention makes people uncomfortable, but sometimes the issues themselves make people uncomfortable. And but again, I think having that perspective has been very valuable, and I think we'll miss it.
Did you get reached out to by her from consultation on this?
Not on the withdrawal, no. I've talked to her since then, but no, like I said, she kept her cards kind of close to her chest. So,
what, from your crystal ball, your connected guy, how much did the police chief's firing have to do with her withdrawal?
Well, I think it was sort of the last straw. I don't think that was the only issue that caused her. But when she, was looking ahead to the next 4 years. It's already obviously been a frustrating experience for her in some ways, looking ahead to the next 4 years, I think she saw it was going to continue to be frustrating in some ways, and that there might be other ways that she can contribute rather than serving in office. So again, I don't begrudge her for a moment. It's a tough position to be in, particularly when you are the mayor. You get arrows from all sides, and she certainly did. But thankfully, she has a very thick skin and was able to keep focused on the reasons that she ran for office. And whenever anybody asks me for advice on running or serving in elected office, I always tell them, don't ever forget why you decided to run. It's so easy to get swallowed up in other people's interests and needs and the cause of the day and what I used to call the inbox effect. All the emails and just phone calls and everything. It's so easy to get distracted from the original motivations that brought you to put yourself in the arena. And she never did lose sight of that. Her family has a long history here. Has had a lot of struggles here as a working class African American family, and she came into office wanting to try and make this a better community for not only for working class African Americans, but I think working in class Charlottesvillians across the board and lower income Charlottesvillians and people that haven't always thrived in this community, and to try to look at how we can change systems to make it better.
What'd you make of Chief Brackney's firing? It
Well,
happened 2 Wednesdays ago.
yeah.
About 16 days ago.
Yeah, I mean, it was sort of a roller coaster ride, all right? Because just like 2 days before, this sort of mysterious press release went out, unsigned press release from the city, essentially praising her handling of recent policing events, and then 2 days later, she was shown the door. So it was sort of a whiplash. But I tend to agree with Vice Mayor McGill and others, and I think Lloyd Snook and others who have said, ultimately, it is the city manager's call. And I think it's helpful when the city manager gets the input of city councilors and the mayor when hiring or even firing top government officials. But ultimately, it is the city manager's call, and he made that call, and hopefully they'll find a chief of police that can come in and do the things. I think Chief Brackney was making some good strides in terms of trying to reform policing in Charlottesville. That's a tough challenge, So I don't envy whoever steps into her shoes, but I think we need to get somebody in here who can continue doing that work because again, it's long overdue, and it's a tall order.
Sarah Landsman giving you some props. Kara Downs, hello and welcome to the broadcast. Folks at the Progress watching the program. Cindy Hertzler, hello and welcome to the show. You got a city councilor watching the show as we speak. If you got questions, comments, anything you want us to talk about, we have Dave for 19 more minutes here on the program. Put them in the feed. I see it coming in on Twitter and LinkedIn. What do you, in regards to Chief Brackney, what do you think led to her firing? I mean, we have conversation is police morale issues with leadership, with rank and file within the department. She was a shortlist candidate for the Dallas, Texas police chief job.
Yeah.
She has done a lot of amazing and positive things with reforming the department. I think Councilor Snook mentioned this while on the dais during a council meeting. The fear was that we would continue to suffer attrition within the department, and then there potentially would not be enough men and women to police the city properly if a change was not made.
Yeah, and I just don't know, and I don't have the sort of inside information that I used to have when I was in office. So I heard Lloyd say on your show, there's a lot of sort of, and I think I've heard Bellamy Brown say on your show as well, there's a lot of information that we're not privy to, not being on the inside. And so I have to assume, I have to take them at their word that there were things going on behind the scenes that sort of precipitated this personnel change. But clearly she, again, just like with Mayor Walker, she was getting arrows from all sides, and at the end of the day, the city manager decided to go in a different direction, and that's his call. I think it's unfortunate in that it did sort of the timing of it was highly unfortunate because it sort of sent a signal that even if it wasn't intentional, it sent a signal that somebody who's coming in and trying to make positive reforms and sort of push back against the old boys network is not somebody we want to have here in the city of Charlottesville. And so I think, again, it sort of creates a kind of a messy environment for whoever comes in to try to fill her shoes. To do they have a mandate or not? She was hired with a mandate to reform policing in Charlottesville. Does this next police chief have that mandate? Are they going to be supported if they try to continue that work? And so that's a big question.
Do you? I'm gonna rattle off some open positions.
Sure.
Okay, we have a neighborhood development service position a few months ago. A gentleman took the job, didn't even show up to Charlottesville, and pieced out to a different jurisdiction.
Right.
We've had Al Thomas, Chief Brackney, and now an interim as the CEO within the police department. We have John Blair, we have Mike Murphy, we have Chip Boyles, the city manager. And those are just the upper level positions. There's been a ton of attrition in middle management in City Hall here. What do you think the outside perspective for qualified candidates coming to the city to fill these open jobs is?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, it's obviously been a tumultuous time, and you and I have talked about this on the show before, that after August of 2017, there was a huge amount of turnover. I don't think there's a single person in any position of real authority left from either in the city or honestly in the state who was involved in that day or that weekend. And I think what's happened since then is sort of a ripple effect. And so I do hope that things start to calm down. And, it's because you in order for the city to be run efficiently and effectively, you need stability in some of these positions. You need stability in City Hall. And so hopefully, we'll start to see a little bit less turnover in the months and years to come. But we also demand a lot of public officials here, and I think that's okay. I think it's okay to have a high bar. Charlottesville is a very civically engaged community. We demand a lot for being a city our size. We expect high quality and responsive services in government, and so sometimes we just haven't had people that have delivered, and don't have the trust of the citizenry. But I do hope it stabilizes moving forward.
Elizabeth Nisos, hello and welcome to the show. Ray Cadell is a huge champion of you. This guy is a conservative,
right.
And he says we need Dave Norris in office again here in Charlottesville to help stabilize the ship. And Gwendolyn Cassidy says, I am with Ray. We need Dave Norris in office one more time. A lot I want to cover here. I want to throw the election to you.
Yeah.
You and I are both political junkies. I just love it. I know you love it as well.
Sure.
It certainly makes great fodder for a talk show.
That's true.
Juan Wade, I think we're both in agreement, a heavy favorite.
Well, I think Juan and Brian at this point are.
You think clear cut, slam dunks?
I mean, I like Yaz. I hope she does well. But I told Yaz from day one, like, if you want to actually run to win, you need to have a strong team. You need to be raising money. You need to be getting your volunteers out. And you need to have a machine, which is what, particularly running as an independent, up against the Charlottesville Democratic Party. You really need to outwork the Charlottesville Democratic Party, which has been very successful. They haven't lost a single city council election in many years, other than Nekiah Walker's, and it's in large part because Nekiah Walker had a machine. She had a compelling message and a compelling bio, but she also had a whole lot of volunteers and donors and supporters. And I haven't seen Yaz pull together that kind of infrastructure, and voting starts tomorrow. So it's a little bit late to be pulling it together, Not
just the infrastructure, but the fundraising.
The fundraising, that's all part of it, yeah.
Right.
And so I like Yaz. I love it. I love to see young people get involved in politics and in public service, and so I hope she stays involved. And who knows, maybe she'll surprise all of us. But I do think it requires it requires a whole lot of effort, particularly when you're going up against two guys who have each raised what, like $70,000, which is
I mean, it's like record-setting
in and of
territory.
itself is insane,
Right.
Jerry. That's just insane.
Right.
And it's unfortunate.
Without a lump sum like a Sonia Smith here.
Right,
I mean,
right.
these are individual donations.
Yeah, yeah.
Small donations.
Well, some of them are not so small, but yeah, I mean, and I don't begrudge them, but it's unfortunate that that's what people feel like it takes to run for office, is that now you have to raise $50, $60, $70, $80,000. You know, the first time I ran, I think I raised $5,000. You know, and it's unfortunate now because it essentially has the effect of pricing out working class and lower income people from being competitive, unless they can find some angel investor who will plop down a big chunk of change, or unless they have a mobilized army of volunteers and supporters. So, but yeah.
Martin Kyle, hello and welcome to the show. Lisa Barnes-Rogers, hello and welcome to the program. Folks, Crozet, Almaro, Belmont, some folks in Richmond and Lynchburg on the broadcast. Where do we go from here? What is you got Juan Diego Wade and Brian Pinkston that have formed a strategic political alliance. For every Juan Diego Wade sign, you often see a Brian Pinkston
Sure.
sign right next to it.
Well,
And
they're
that's-
ticket mates. Yeah,
they're
I mean,
ticket
that's,
mates.
yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that Yaz in any capacity can rally Nakia Walker's base to make a push at Pinkston, or do you think that is unlikely?
Anything's possible, but I don't see it happening. I mean, again, and voting starts tomorrow, so it's something that she would have started needing to do like 6 months ago, you know. And so, again, I like her, and I hope she does well, and she brings a great spirit to the race. But I haven't seen signs of like pulling together the kind of effort, the concerted effort that's required to, knock off a Democratic Party candidate here in a heavily Democratic city like Charlottesville.
Jonathan asked this question: was the firing of Chief Brackney fair? And the second part, please ask your guest what he thinks of City Manager Chip Boyles and the job he's doing.
I haven't been on the inside, so to see Chip's handiwork, I've heard good things in general about Chip. I've met Chip a few times over the years. I don't know Chip personally, but I have a good impression of him. Again, I think the way that Chief Brackney, it's his call. I thought the timing, again, and not to repeat myself, but I thought the timing was just unfortunate, and the process was a little unfortunate. And the fact that there were city councilors and the mayor who felt blindsided by it is highly problematic, because that's something they should have had forewarning about.
Do you believe that?
Yeah. I do.
You don't see that as just political talk?
No, I think they were legit, and again, it's his call, but that doesn't mean he shouldn't have consulted with them on it, or at least given them advance warning. And apparently, he did try to reach some of them by phone right before the announcement came out.
That's what Lloyd said.
But right,
Yeah.
But when you're a city councilor or mayor and you hear about it first, like from a news reporter, that's problematic. So, but was it fair? That's not really for me to say. Ultimately, it's his call. I do think she was trying to do some good things in terms of reforming policing, and that's my worry, is that the next person that fills her shoes isn't going to feel like they have the support or the mandate to continue that work, and I hope that's not the case.
Dave Norris, our guest. Nathan Miller will join us in T-minus 9 minutes here on the program. If you have a question for Dave Norris, please put it in the feed. We see some comments coming in here that we will get to in a matter of moments, I promise. Keith Smith says, "Go, Dave, go."
Thank you, Keith.
Gwendolyn says, please discuss the crossings and the initial baby steps on getting the ball rolling at the crossings.
The original crossings? Well, I mean, that was a long process that took years, but it was, it's one of those things that I was very pleased that the way it eventually turned out. It was a project that was quite a few times over the course of 2 or 3 years. People thought it had died, and there was one local figure who kept referring to it as the Lazarus Project because it kept coming back from the dead. But it ultimately got built. At the time, it was the biggest single investment of funds from our city's affordable housing fund, which we got created while I was in office. And I'm very pleased that it was able to provide housing, permanent supportive housing, for dozens of people who had been living out on the streets for years, if not decades. And now we're in the process of building a follow-up up on 29 North. Piedmont Housing Line, which is the organization I now work for, is working with the Thomas Jefferson Area Coalition for the Homeless and POCHM and other organizations and Virginia Supportive Housing to create a Crossings 2 up on 29 North, which I'm very excited about.
Jennifer says, Jerry, please ask Dave how affordable housing and its efforts are keeping up with marketplace and capitalism.
Yeah, it's not. It's not, and that's the problem. And so it needs an ongoing, consistent, concerted effort and funding and advocacy and champions, people like Keith Smith and others, Dan Rosenzweig, Sunshine Mathon, a lot of people, Nikiah Walker, many people who have been championing Charlottesville Low-Income Housing Coalition, a lot of people out there that are making the case for affordable housing. We haven't kept up with the demand, and so that's why I'm excited to see. I know it's been a little bit of a contentious effort, but in the process of looking at the city's comprehensive plan and zoning, the future land use map, there's a lot of interest now in seeing how we can incorporate more affordable housing, and not just sort of within the existing lower income neighborhoods in Charlottesville, but we need to decentralize it and deconcentrate it so that we have affordable housing throughout the city. And so that's an admirable goal. It's a bumpy road to get there, but I'm confident we'll get there eventually. So
6.5 minutes left, guys, with Dave Norris before Nathan Miller joins us over there from the green room.
Right, I see that. I see that. You have quite an operation now, Jerry.
Dave Norris, you're a good man right here. So this question is coming in. Jerry, please ask Dave Norris the role that the University of Virginia has to play with creating affordability in this community. That's a good question.
It's a great question. And it's twofold. One is how do they relieve pressure on our housing market? Because one of the biggest contributors to the lack of affordable housing in Charlottesville is the students living off of grounds. So how does UVA build more student housing, and how do we encourage more student housing development in the neighborhoods right around the university so that they're not occupying housing that could go to working class Charlottesvillians? So that's one piece of it. But then UVA has also stepped up, and I got to give Jim Ryan credit for this, is that they've stepped up and made a commitment to build 1,000 units of affordable housing on university land in the coming years. It's a question now of what does that look like and who's it affordable for and how's that going to happen. But just the fact that they've made that commitment, he's also one of the very first things he did when he came in office was agreed to increase the base wage for all university employees to match what the city has done. That was huge. The university said for years they couldn't do it, and Jim Ryan, in one of his very first acts in office, said we're going to do it. And they used to say it's going to bust our budget, and it turns out it really was a very modest impact on the university's budget. So I think there's good changes in the works, and obviously the devil's in the details.
Do you think second years, maybe even upperclassmen, should be required to live on grounds to help alleviate the crunch? And Neil Williamson, hello and welcome to the show.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it makes sense to require it or not, but again, I think as long as we're providing the supply that's either on grounds or immediately adjacent to grounds, and so that we're relieving some of the impact on our city neighborhoods, I think that's really what's most important. So.
Upzoning the city of Charlottesville to create more density.
Yeah, I think it's a good move in general. And again, it's one of the biggest drivers of housing costs is supply and demand, and we need more supply. I hate to see that supply be built out, in the paving over forests and fields out in the rural areas. I'd like to see that supply concentrated in the urban areas for many reasons. So it makes sense to increase density in the city. And I think this whole planning process is getting to a point. And one thing that I've been very pleased to see is that across the board, even the people that are saying we don't want, the not in my backyard folks,
the NIMBYs,
even they are saying we do need affordable housing. Their question is, if we increase density just for density's sake, is that in and of itself going to create affordable housing? And so everybody's asking the question, how do we create more affordable housing? Now, there is a small subset of that NIMBY population, which is pissing me off right now, Jerry, because they're trying to make the argument we don't actually have an affordable housing problem in Charlottesville. And if you talk to anybody in Charlottesville that makes less than 6 figures a year, they're going to tell you, yes, we have an affordable housing problem in Charlottesville. And the fact that some people are turning a blind eye to that is, I think, highly unfortunate. You ask anybody who's worked in any restaurant, in any service, retail industry, even teachers, police officers, they will all tell you it's hard to find housing they can afford here in the city of Charlottesville.
Ray Cadell, this comment for you, pretty much on the lines of what we're talking. 2.5 minutes left with Dave Norris here. Ray says, Dave, do you think people who purchase real estate with a particular zoning have the right or at least expectation that it will stay in that zoning?
Well, cities are living and breathing organisms, and so no, I don't think we should. If something was zoned the same way, a certain way 200 years ago, does that mean it can never change? No, I don't agree that it should never change. Now, I think it's important that people be engaged in that process, and that we have a very inclusive conversation and process for deciding how we're going to change zoning. And I think that's happening now. And again, it's messy and it's bumpy. But as long as we get to a place where we're able to, increase density where it can be accommodated naturally and organically, so like certain commercial hubs, intersections, whatnot, commercial streets, et cetera, et cetera. So I do think we need to look at increasing density. We definitely need to look at increasing the supply and deconcentrating the supply of affordable housing, and I think it can be accomplished in a good way.
Alice Washington, welcome to the broadcast. Dave Norris, are you bullish on Charlottesville, Virginia's near-term future?
Yes, I'm always bullish on Charlottesville, and I think we have what it takes to, the big question is always, are we going to do right by the Alice Washingtons of the world? Alice is president of the Crescent Halls Tenant Association, longtime, residents of that building that have lived in Charlottesville their whole lives, sometimes in many cases lived here for generations, haven't always been treated very well and haven't always had the best of opportunities. And so I think we have what it takes to create a better community for people like Alice and her neighbors and for everyone else who calls Charlottesville home, but it's got to take people coming together to make it happen.
We have 90 seconds left with you.
All right.
Okay, I promise you it'll be 1 o'clock. It might be 1 o'clock.
That's okay, that's fine.
Okay, we have interest rates at generational historical lows.
Mm-hmm.
We are under inventoried from a real estate standpoint, big time.
Yes.
We have the COVID impact where big city, Northern Virginia, can move down here and work from an ISP in their basement, but still maintain their McLean, Arlington, DC salaries and have lower cost of living here. I literally, where I'm at, have neighbors that are coming from Northern Virginia, DC, and taking up the inventory that otherwise would be Central Virginia. It seems to me that this is going to get snowballed and snowballed and snowballed and become worse and worse and worse, the cost of living issue.
Absolutely, and that's why your earlier question is affordable housing keeping up with the market? No, it's not, and that's part of the reason why is that more and more people are moving to Charlottesville, and we're rapidly becoming one of those cities where if you're not making a significant amount of money, you can't afford to live here, and so and that's would be highly unfortunate. It's already happening, but it seems like it's getting worse, and so and again to accommodate people who aren't making high incomes, it takes effort. It's not you can't just expect the market to take care of it on itself, by itself. And so, and that doesn't necessarily mean it's always a governmental solution. But we're blessed to have nonprofits like PHA, like Habitat for Humanity. We have the Housing Authority. We have many other organizations and individuals who are pushing back against that trend, but it's going to just take more resources, more effort, more energy in order to make this a livable community for all of our residents.
I got many folks asking you about the Police Civilian Review Board.
Okay.
Our common friend Bellamy Brown
Yeah.
is the chairman.
Yes.
Bellamy Brown brings to light the leadership issues in the department in a meeting of the Civilian Review Board 2 meetings ago. Mm-hmm. That attention creates a media storm. There was some of it here
Yep.
that potentially or very well led to Brackney's firing. Multiple part question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Bellamy is now being potentially pushed out by Nancy Carpenter and another board member where they had a vote of no confidence.
Right.
They're now backdooring with city council demanding Bellamy Brown's resignation of chairman of the Police Civilian Review Board. That literally is happening another episode of As the World Turns in Charlottesville, Virginia here.
Yeah.
Your thoughts on this whole fiasco?
Well,
last question.
You and I, we're friends with Bellamy. I like Bellamy, and I'm not here to trash Bellamy at all. I mean, I think again, the timing of this whole thing. I heard Lloyd Snook say in your show that it wasn't necessarily that PCRB discussion that precipitated Chief Brackney's firing. And I have to, I mean, if Lloyd's on the inside, so he would know, right? And so I have to take him at his word. So so then it sort of begs the question, well, what is the role of the PCRB? You know, and I think people have asked the legitimate question, you know, is it as an advocate for
citizen
or police?
Yeah, that's a fair question.
Right, it's a fair question, and I think, and you know, what we see in PCRBs or citizen review boards all over the country is there's always this tension, right? Many of them, probably most of them, are accused of being too pro-police. Some of them are perceived as being too anti-police, and so there's always this tension on citizen review boards everywhere. So that's not unique to Charlottesville, and I think it's incumbent on City Council to make sure the people on that citizen review board, the people they appoint to that citizen review board, are able to manage that dynamic, because I think there's a strong desire on the part of this community to, we want good policing in Charlottesville, right?
Any community.
Yeah, and so, you know, I think it's the part of the job of the PCRB is to figure out that balance. And so I hope they can figure out, I hope we can, again, sort of stabilize to where we can get back to the original mission of this PCRB, which is looking at ways in which we don't have good policing and how do we improve that and how do we fix that.
Can you, we'll close on this. I love talking with you.
Yeah.
Because you're super smart and you know what's going on. Can you imagine the political firestorm if City Council forces the chairman of a police civilian review board to resign or off that board?
Right.
I mean, for lack of a better phrase, and I don't use profanities often here,
right,
that it would be a shitstorm.
It would be, and I'm not sure that, you know, I don't know that he's sort of crossed that threshold in terms of, I mean, it may well be he's not reappointed when his term comes up, but in terms of dismissing him mid-term, that really requires...
Because that's what Nancy and another board member are trying to do.
Right.
Two white board members trying to push the black chairman off and then leveraging council to do the dirty work. That's potentially a shitstorm.
It is, and is. So I just don't want to get into that. That's I don't know, again, what's happening behind the scenes. I just hope we can get them back to their original mission, as I said, of fixing policing in Charlottesville. So.
You are A+.
Thank you, Jerry.
Can we do this?
Can I make a quick announcement?
Yeah, please.
So one of the other hats that I wear in Charlottesville is as executive director of the Charlottesville Winneba Foundation, which supports the sister city connection between Charlottesville and Winneba and Ghana. It's a thriving partnership, and we are organizing another trip from Charlottesville to Winneba, Ghana, at the end of December for about 10 days. And I want to make an announcement. We're having an information session for this upcoming trip. If anybody's watching and might be interested in participating, it's an experience of a lifetime. It's a life-changing experience. And we're looking to take about 20 to 30 people over to Ghana end of December for 10 days. Next Wednesday, the 22nd at 7 p.m., and I'll post this on my Facebook, and it's on the Charlottesville Winneba Foundation website as well. Google Charlottesville Winneba. It's a Zoom information session. The link is posted on the website. If you have any interest, please tune in.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. Always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure. You have a good one. Enjoy your Friday.
Thank you, sir.
Dave Norris, guys, former mayor of Charlottesville, Virginia. Nathan Miller, in a matter of moments, professor at Piedmont. He's going to join us here on the program. He's walking. See you, Dave. He's walking from our illustrious green room now to our chair. If you could sit here, my friend. Scoot up a little closer. You could put that on set, absolutely. You're going to want to be about 2 fists away from the microphone. That's perfect. Your camera is over here, my friend, Nathan Miller. All right, the show is yours, Nathan. Introduce yourself to everybody that's watching.
All right. Hi. Well, thank you, Jerry, for this wonderful opportunity. With COVID, I can't get to my conferences to really talk about myself and my book and all of what I do, but this is a great experience. So, I'm Nate Miller. I'm a professor of horticulture over at PVCC. I also am the landscape designer at Messer Landscapes over in Stanton, Virginia, but we do cover Charlottesville up to Harrisonburg and down to Lexington and to Monterey. So I'm over here frequently between my teaching and then helping projects get done over here. And I also run my own business, Simply Sustainable Landscapes, which I've written a book about. 10 years in the making, and it's finally got published, and now I'm on the road kind of touring and telling people about it. And
got it right here.
Yep, that's right.
I'm going to do a deep dive on this. If I can get you to slide a little bit to your right.
Okay.
This way. That way, a little more to the right. That way we get you front and center.
Okay.
Being a professor at Piedmont, What's that like? How long you been doing it? What's it like? What do you enjoy about it? What's tough about it?
Oh my goodness. Well, it wasn't just Piedmont. I also teach at JMU too, a lifelong learning course in going into nature and agritourism. It's challenging and it's rewarding, and there's been a lot of changes at PVCC. So when I started in 2013, so it's been quite a while, I was in the horticulture department, and it was actually in the science department. Unfortunately, decisions were made, and that program folded, and we were left at, what do? We got this wonderful, curriculum here. We don't want to let it go because Charlottesville, the PVCC serves the Charlottesville area, and there's so many people that were coming in either as in the workforce or through wanting to do home gardening. And we saw this niche, and my dean, Dean Chappell, said, why don't you go pitch this to workforce? So I went down and talked to Greg Roscoe about it, and I told him a little bit about my history, and basically just said, we've got a curriculum here, why don't we do this? And he said yes, and so we've been doing this in workforce, teaching right now basic horticulture. We also are doing beekeeping. So one of the greatest things was I don't have to grade people with a letter grade anymore, and as you can imagine, landscape designs are very subjective. It's like an art form. So how in the world do you grade somebody's art, basically? And I don't have to do that anymore, so it's now a pass or fail course. And so that's the beauty of this course. And I get to teach what I feel is important in the landscaping industry, sustainability, and soon possibly cannabis. That will be another thing we're looking into.
I was going to ask you, I've said this many times on the program, not ashamed to admit this, I am very pro-cannabis.
Well, that's good.
I think it's a no-brainer. I think the federal government, about a century ago, took a plant from the ground and turned it into essentially the devil's juice for the
Correct.
sake of keeping jobs in the federal government. That's
Correct.
basically what happened in a very layman's
Yes.
perspective, in a very layman's couple sentences.
Yes.
I think the economic potential of cannabis in the Commonwealth is off the charts, something that could potentially rival wineries, breweries, and vineyards.
Mm-hmm.
I think the economic potential from creating new jobs is off the charts.
Mm-hmm.
I think the eradication of people with convictions tied to cannabis should happen immediately.
Mm-hmm.
I think the fact that people people of color, brown and black people, are being arrested and charged in our most recent history at 3 times the rate of a white
Indeed.
person.
Indeed.
And I think that is an absolute hypocrisy and travesty.
Mm-hmm.
Racial profiling tied to cannabis. I'm tired and done with that. This is a plant and a product and a marketplace that I am bullish on, and it's ready to boom. Anywhere you want to go on this?
Absolutely. So, and we're not just talking about marijuana when we mean cannabis. We mean hemp, too.
Hemp?
Hemp is a multi-million-dollar
CBD?
industry. Yep, CBD oil. You can make 250,000 different parts with hemp. Airplane parts.
I'm giving you props right now. I'm giving you props right
Great,
now.
thanks, man.
Keep going, baby. Keep going.
Well, I mean, and it's easy to grow. It is essentially a weed, so it's something that grows like a weed. It grows really fast. It can tolerate a lot of different soils. It can tolerate a lot of different a range of conditions as well. And it used to be a powerhouse industry. Hemp, especially during World War II, provided a lot of the rope for the war efforts as we were looking into a lot of plant materials, because so much was going to the war effort. Hemp was readily available and was farmed not only for those farmers who needed rope, for instance. I live on a farm in Rockingham County, Virginia, so I'm sure there's probably some old rope up in the barn somewhere that predates the cannabis bans, obviously. And I think it also, for farmers, it provides an incentive too. I live in the Shenandoah Valley of Virginia, and there's a lot of farming, and agriculture is looking for the next big thing. There's a lot of problems with small farmers. They're suffering right now, and a lot of them are leaving because it's just hard for them to compete against big ag. And so I think hemp and marijuana would give them a great opportunity to save the farm, so to speak. Kind of like the old John Mellencamp, Farm Aid thing, only you're doing something not raising money for them. You're actually giving them a career, in a sense, that's a long-lasting career beyond the crisis of the moment.
How difficult is it to be a farmer right now in 2021? Not just a farmer, but how difficult is it to be a farmer that has had a farm in his or her family for generations that does not have deep economic bags of money?
It's very difficult. You'd have to diversify, and that's even what my granddaddy used to do. So my granddaddy was a farmer. I'm not, but I sort of live on the farm. And I tinker around with my horticulture on the farm. But granddaddy saw this in the mid-20th century, in the 50s and 60s. He found that farming was just not bringing in the money, and he needed to expand. So he went into business, and he started doing business adventures such as Sierra stoves, which many people in Virginia might have a Sierra stove in their house if they look. Also, the Bridgewater Plow and Till Shop. He worked there for a while, and it was world-renowned for the quality of their tillers. And during times of strife, like when we had the oil crisis in the early 70s, Granddaddy sold a lot of those plows and tillers because people were getting back into gardening again at that time, and also looking for other ways to offset their oil and gas uses, which is a basis of my book too.
Tell us, we're going to ask you about the book. He's got the book here. I can't wait to talk about it. Mm-hmm. I can't wait to promote it. I can't wait to sell some copies. I can't wait to ask you where we can buy the book. Mm-hmm. Your prediction on how cannabis is going to impact Charlottesville, Albemarle County, Central Virginia, and the Commonwealth in the near term and in the long term?
Well, I would say right now we're looking at, as far as the educational side, that's where I come in. I'm looking at that. The vice president of PVCC has shown interest in promoting some sort of an educational aspect of cannabis. I believe that we will probably see a program develop here soon.
How so? What does that mean?
So
how to grow, how to monetize,
exactly.
How to build a brand.
Exactly. And we're going to work with Shenandoah Valley Hemp in Elkton, and they have been integral in starting the ball rolling on the business side of things. The boys over there at Shenandoah Valley Hemp have been working on their business for the last 3 or 4 years and have really expanded, and they're bringing in people on tours even. I'm going to bring people from PVCC for a tour of the business, as well as people from JMU, and whoever wants to. I'm all in for the agritourism, so I think hemp will have that aspect too. I think it will become an agritourism concept. I think it will only grow because you see the medicinal uses for marijuana, for instance, and the recreational people. People want to do it. People want to do it without feeling, I'm going to get caught, I'm going to get in trouble. But now that it's getting legalized, hopefully we'll hammer out the law a little bit more. But yeah, I think I see a definite bright future. I would say in the next 10 years, you're going to see some major leaps and bounds, not just on the business side and the growing side and the farming side, but the education side and the legal side as well. Things are changing. I think we have a lot of places to look to watch, like D.C., Colorado, Washington State have been doing it for a long time, following those states' leads and seeing
the good, the bad, the ugly.
Exactly, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Jordan Liskey, welcome to the program. Folks in Bridgewater watching the show. Folks in Rockingham County watching the show. Folks in Harrisonburg on the stream watching the program. McLean, Arlington, Richmond, Charlottesville, and Crozet on the stream. This is Tim Burns. Welcome to the broadcast on Twitter. Thank you for joining us. This is one of the concerns I have. Mm-hmm. Okay. And Leslie, I'm going to get to your question. Leslie has the question, will cannabis be even more of an impact in this area as tobacco was some decades ago? I'll get to that, Leslie, for Nathan. Nathan or Nate? What do you prefer?
Nate. Usually I go by Nate.
Okay, Nate. Here's the question I have. Nate, the retail licenses, if these retail licenses go to big business and not locals, my standpoint, that's a travesty.
It is.
If the green tape from the governor's mansion, from the White House, state government, federal government, if that green tape makes this process more appealing to big business and not mom and pops, that's a travesty.
I totally agree.
I'm fearful that's going to happen.
And
Prove me wrong.
I really want small business and small growers to benefit the most from this. I'm not up on all the political ins and outs about this, and I know that you and I both know that big business is going to try to swoop in and make a killing off of
They're
this.
lobbying right now.
Exactly. And that is my fear. And so I would say, people, let's organize on this. Small growers, small businesses, let's form a coalition of some sort. I mean, I'm willing and ready and able through my platform and through education, and that's kind of why I wanted to do a program for the small grower, for the small business, so that we can kind of get this going, so that big business isn't coming in and stamping their name on my class or our organization, giving some incentive on the small business side and the small grower side. That's my hope. That's why I'm doing it, and that's why I feel like we should do this at PVCC.
Giving you props. Trisha Farrell, hello and welcome to the show. Answer Leslie's question about cannabis and could it have a greater impact on the Commonwealth than tobacco did, say, 25 years ago?
Well, Leslie, it's hard to say but I feel that it would be a pretty big impactful crop. And why I think that is when you think about all the products that tobacco reigned supreme here in Virginia for many, many decades, and you're already starting to see multiple products from the medical to just the recreational growing. The long and short of it is, I think, yes, it will be a powerhouse. I think it will be equivalent to, but only time will tell as to whether that's true or not. If that's the best way I can answer that, I guess, for now, because we don't have a crystal ball on this.
Well, what's your crystal ball?
My crystal ball on this is it will be as big as the tobacco industry, because tobacco has waned. This is the next crop that has the multiple facets, particularly the recreational side of it.
Well, tobacco's waned because we've become educated on the negative health impacts of tobacco. Will that ever transpire with this, with cannabis?
With education on the negatives?
Yeah.
Oh, sure. Now we see what we didn't have back in the 20th century or when tobacco was king, that we have now is the internet and the ability to find EBSCO-host articles, peer-reviewed journals, information from the CDC. I wouldn't take advice from some rando on Facebook. I would go to the actual sources. As a professor, I want everybody to do that, no matter what they're doing, no matter what they're researching. I want you to go to clear and concise and logical and good sources, especially if you're writing papers. Those of you out there who are writing papers on cannabis or on edible landscaping or whatever it may be.
Nathan Guys, our guest, Nate Miller, our guest on the program, professor at James Madison University in Piedmont. This question comes in from Brian. Piedmont is truly a resource for our community. Our son went to Piedmont for 2 years, maintained good grades, and ended up at the University of Virginia. Today, he is a fourth year, found his niche and his passion, which he did not find coming out of high school, and is happier than ever.
Oh my goodness. Well, that is wonderful, and I'm glad to hear success stories like that, because that's what drives me to teach. What drives me to teach is hearing people finding their passions, and me as sort of the vehicle to guide them into those passions, which is usually landscaping and horticulture, or a career in either one of those, or even if you just want to do a home garden or landscape on a balcony. That is my goal through education, and PVCC has created a great opportunity for me to do that over the years, and I've been glad to be there and do what I can and help the community. I mean, you will meet people out there that have had my class, I'm sure. If you're talking about landscaping, you'll hear me up there. I take the students to edible landscaping all the time. I take them to Fifth Season. I take them to Morven, where Rebecca Deeds over there helps guide us around. So people know of the class, and I'm taking the mantle of Ian Robertson there, who was the former head honcho of the program. Unfortunately, he passed away. Many of you may have known or have taken a class with Ian. That's who I've basically replaced in that capacity at the school.
Tell us about the book here in a moment. I want you to hold it up. It's beautiful. I can't wait to learn about it. We're going to get some photos of you with the book. I mean, it's gorgeous. It's absolutely gorgeous. Before I do, questions and comments coming on the feed about what you do with hops and the beer scene.
Oh my goodness.
Show is yours. Anywhere you want to go.
Well, with hops, I'll tell you, we have obviously a great opportunity with that. Now, it's more of a cooler season plant. So it is a little difficult to grow with our high humidity and frequent pest problems that come from that, and the heat too. It can be done. There are cultivars that are a little more tolerant. But I think when you see Nelson County with all the breweries there, I think there's tremendous potential there. I think if you're on my side of the mountain in the Harrisonburg area, there's tremendous potential there, and in Stanton and Waynesboro as well. We are blessed to have a lot of agricultural area here.
I mean, right?
Exactly.
With the grapes for wineries and vineyards, with hops, with cannabis. Why is it such a rich environment for growing these commodities?
It's the elevation, the geography, and the weather. It's just a perfect. There's just a perfect. I don't want to say storm because that sounds negative, but
collision of factors.
Blend. Let's say a blend of things, and that means you could grow different things at many different levels of altitude, and different soils provide different opportunities to grow. I mean, Lonnie Murray, who you've had on the show.
Love Lonnie Murray.
He and I go out and explore native landscapes, and we see this just in the wildflowers around Virginia and West Virginia and the Carolinas or wherever we go. So I think with the hops, yes. Wouldn't it be great if every place that was providing some sort of a food that could be grown to have it on display at their restaurant, their brewery, or whatever to show, yes, we harvest our own stuff. Or we could take you to a place where we could show you this is our own crop that we produce the beer, the cannabis, the whatever it is, the herbs for a meal. I mean, and that's part of my mantra as with the edible landscaping, is doing it wherever, whenever possible.
Corey Stanhope giving you props.
Well, thank you, Corey.
You got the Commonwealth watching you here. Let's get that book out. Let's get the book out.
Oh, absolutely. So here's the book. The cover was done by a friend of mine at JMU in Madison Motorsports. I'm also a car guy, so I do a lot of car stuff, mostly photography. That would be that's Scott. He's on there, and I can, if anybody needs any watercolors done, I can lead you towards Scott to do some watercolors. But he did the cover of my book. And so the story of this book, and you want me to launch into the story?
Oh, let's do it.
All right, so the story of this book is 10
Give me that elevator pitch, baby.
All right, it's 10 years in the making. So this book, Simply Sustainable, same title as my business, covers the southeastern United States. This was started when I went to Clemson for grad school when I was in landscape architecture school getting my master's. My friend Genesis Johnson, who's also my co-contributor, we met one day on a project we had to do in horticulture. And this couple came in from outside of South Carolina near a place called Central. And they had this huge land, and they wanted to do something with the land. They had built a new house on it. And so they came to the school and said, what can you students do for us? And we came out with all these plans, and Genesis and I teamed up together, and I said, you know what we should do? You and I both like doing edible plants, we like native plants and all that. Why don't we combine forces and do this for their project? What we came up with was called the Backyard Bilo, and I don't know if you've ever been to the Carolinas and Georgia down there. That's basically their version of a Kroger, a little regional supermarket.
Okay.
And the tagline was meaning we wanted for the Petties, this is the couples, or the name of the Petties, we wanted them to be able to grow as much as they could on their property. Bear in mind, this is 2009 during the middle of the recession. So we're trying to figure out how can they cut their gas and their food bills down. And so we did everything from having a field of grains to grow wheat, like for breads and things like that, a chicken coop, a themed garden with like the tea garden, the Italian garden, like any type of like a specialty food crops, herbs, native wildflowers, a recreational place for the kids. Now, unfortunately, they didn't pick our project, but they loved what we did. But we decided to say, you know what, we got a great project here. Let's write about this. And I said, let's go beyond this and read up about what else is in there in edible landscaping. Has anybody done this before? And yes, there is a precedent. Rosalind Creasy from California wrote a book called Edible Landscaping in 1982. And that was our precedent for this book. But Rosalind didn't add native plants and especially took a regional approach. She was kind of painting a broad brush, and I love her, but just a broad brush across the United States, not really focusing on the specifics of the region. So we decided to take our region, the Southeast, with the idea that we do others, everywhere from Hawaii to in the Northeast to the Midwest, eventually. But we wanted to start here first and show some projects that we have all worked on, like spiral herb gardens or African keyhole gardens that we have done that demonstrates a theory of landscaping we have developed called eons. And this is the premise of the book, is we're telling you how to do the eons theory, and eons is spelled E-O-N-S, and each letter stands for something. E, O, and S stand for E is edible plants, O is ornamental plants, but not invasives like English ivy or periwinkle, and N is native plants, and S is sustainable methods, which that is a catch-all for rain barrels, solar panels, windmills, drip irrigation, greenhouses, etc. So this nice little package with a neat little acronym we developed in 2012 to basically describe what we had been doing for 5 years, to package it to sell to the whole Southeast. And that's what I have been teaching my students what to do. I have been teaching anybody that comes to Messer about my theory of landscaping. We want to revolutionize landscaping in the United States. I even have a whole history of landscaping in the United States in this book that brings us up to today and why we came up with this landscape theory. So that's a little bit about the book, and it's got everything you need for the Southeast: zones, growing conditions, and there's even an encyclopedia on my website I'm building on all the plants that you'd ever want to grow.
You're fantastic.
Thanks.
You are super intelligent, dude. I mean, you're off the charts smart here. Where can we buy the book?
Well, it's on Amazon and on my website, Simply Sustainable Landscapes, LLC. And if you ever take my class, I could bring copies to the class too. And I do go to conferences like Mother Earth News, Carolina Farm Stewardship Association, hopefully up there to Monticello with the Harvest Festival. I know they did it online this year, but maybe next year we'll actually do an in-person one, I hope. Ira Wallace is the person, and Ira Wallace is a great person. She's head of the Southern Seed Exchange, where I get a lot of my seeds for the area here.
Well, I want to throw this to you. Bashir is watching. Bashir says you're his neighbor in Afton?
Well, I live in Bridgewater, actually.
Okay. So I don't think it's Nate there, Bashir. I'll throw this to you. I'd love to feature Piedmont more on this show. I'd love to feature your colleagues, your efforts. I think what you're doing and what the school is doing is amazing.
And don't forget Messer Landscapes now. We're taking the lead on that. With
Let's go.
The
Let's
Eons,
go.
yeah. And we work right here in Charlottesville. I mean, so I have the multifaceted layers here of being a landscape designer for 2 companies, my own and Messer, and helping them out. And also PVCC and JMU. And I do things on my own too. I offer trips, like wildflower trips. So if you want to see wildflowers, I'm game for taking people on excursions, much like what Lonnie and I do in our spare time.
How'd you meet Lonnie?
Lonnie and I met on Facebook on the Virginia Native Plant Society Facebook page at one time, posting pictures and just talking about the various plants we see in our travels around Virginia.
I love it. I love it. I love the power of social media when used for the good. Please pass along to your colleagues at school that I'd love to feature Piedmont even more in the program. Your colleagues, the professors, the curriculum, the education. I think what you're doing is amazing. I think you are empowering, educating, and creating confidence in the next generation of landscaping, cannabis, hops, entrepreneurs. And I'll tell you what.
Well, also climate change now.
Climate change.
This book is giving you a roadmap as how to try to live through climate change, because we're going to have to live with it. We're too late to stop it. We should have stopped it sometime in the 60s when we knew, because the oil companies didn't know, and the science is there. But I think we've got a roadmap with this book, with people in the permaculture area, and we have the education through PVCC, JMU. You've got me. I mean, and we're all going to give you a roadmap as to how to survive this thing. And that's where I think that's our biggest threat to life on this planet right now.
I'm tagging you with Bashir. Bashir, I'm writing it right now. Nathan Miller on this comment thread. He wants to follow up with you. He has acres of land that he needs to optimize and step up. So you may have just picked up a customer.
Oh, this is awesome. Well, I'm glad to be a part of whatever you're planning, and we'll look forward to working with you in one way or another.
And he said he's buying your book, by the way.
Oh, awesome.
Bashir, you can buy the book
Thank
on
you.
Amazon. Bashir, I'm literally responding. Bashir, Nathan's book is for sale on Amazon.
Yes, yeah.
My friend, I wish you the best. I found you fascinating, and we will reach out to you again to get you back on the program,
Great.
to catch up on everything that you just talked about today.
Awesome. Well, I'm on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, and I have my own website. I do want to give a shout out to a friend of mine who I think you might want to have on the show one day. Another interesting friend.
Okay.
Jason Richardson of Scottsville, Virginia.
Okay.
He is head of Swing Set LLC. He does drifting events at Shenandoah Speedway.
Okay. You do a Facebook message introduction, and I'll get him on there. I trust your judgment.
Sure, absolutely.
I absolutely trust your judgment. Guys, this is the Trip Gibson is giving you props. This is the I Love Seville show, where we not only feature the best of Charlottesville, not only the best of Central Virginia, but esteemed individuals like this across the Commonwealth. Nate Miller, professor at James Madison University and at Piedmont as well. My friend, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
I hope everyone enjoys their weekend. They keep it local. Keep your dollars in the local community. Support the businesses and the people that are the foundation of the community, please. We will be back on Monday with Harrison Keevil, the chef and restaurateur who's opened up Multiverse Kitchens, a ghost kitchen for 7 different restaurant brands. Wow. Harrison Keevil, Monday on the I Love Seville show. You guys have a good weekend. Take care.
We all.
Second, and I'll get your picture. Not quite yet.
Do you want me to?